Oh, ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Welcome back to the Wednesday Word Wad. I'm here with Mike, and we are going to be going over the psychology of helping our clients reach their goals or be successful with whatever they're trying to do within the gym. That could be training specific, relationship with food, anything nutrition wise. It's kind of a free for all. It could be applied to all aspects of it.
Yes.
Mike, how would you like to start this? Because I know that this is something that is an ongoing thing I'm trying to learn about and get better at, and I know that this is probably one of your specialties, is understanding your clients, kind of meeting where they're at, and being able to adjust their training or nutrition based on where they're currently at, and kind of provide a plan for them.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of different routes or avenues we could go with this topic. Every individual is going to be an individual case study. The psychology of any individual client is going to be complex. The approach is going to be multifactorial, and there's a lot of angles to take to hopefully increase success likelihood. Now, we do know, based on statistics, in terms of when people try to diet, the likelihood that someone successfully reaches their goal and maintains their goal is quite low. We've seen some statistics showing 5% success likelihood. So I think a lot of people, especially in society, have maybe given up. People have set goals for themselves. I think everyone craves progress. I think progress is placed into our DNA, but actually achieving it, that's different.
Yeah.
So for me, when working with an athlete, working with an individual, I think the important starting point is to let them do the talking. Try to understand what they want and why they want it. So at our gym here, and at Midwest Strength Performance, or FTX, we encourage our clients to create SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound.
Okay.
I think that's really important. And then kind of delving into that, how we interact with them in that client-athlete relationship, that matters. And we believe in autonomy, and success is because of the individual. It's not because we're special. It's because we work with are special. But how we interact in that relationship does matter.
Okay.
So you'll see in the 70s and 80s, coaches, I think more so, would go with the hardcore mindset to inspire someone or motivate them towards success. I think I get my clients some other times, like some doctors, most doctors are great. Some doctors, they might use guilt tripping. You have to lose weight or you're going to die. Some hardcore-ish.
Yeah.
We know that doesn't work most of the time. Most of the time, people, if you try to motivate them with the hardcore philosophy, they just get pissed or they get sad. And neither way works. So we're really big in setting up a client journey where we find out, what is your goal? Is this goal actually achievable? And then from there, on a psychology lens, asking questions that allows them to kind of capture that goal in an intrinsic factor. So oftentimes we'll have someone come in and they say, I want to look great so that my wife loves me. Now, that is a goal, all right?
Yes.
That's somewhat specific. I guess you could measure it, maybe like how often the wife kisses you.
Yeah. I guess.
But it's not very quantitative. It's qualitative. It's abstract, and emotional biases will kind of, I don't know, shift the lens of whether you're successful or not. So instead, we like to help our clients set up intrinsic goals. An example could be, I want to look a certain way so that the way I look expresses the confidence that I feel internally.
Okay.
So tapping into the inward nature of the individual has been shown to increase success. So that's a qualitative way to look at something that actually may work somewhat. From there, we'll set up some quantitative markers. So for that person, they might do a DEXA. They might say, well, if I drop 15 pounds of body fat, that's going to kind of serve me well in achieving this aesthetic goal. We may say, sure. From there, we want to set up a road plan or a map that includes accountability, autonomy for the individual, and a step-by-step nature to get there, while also factoring in potential roadblocks. I think one of the reasons why a lot of people are not successful, at least in their fitness goals, is they start out very inspired. They start out very motivated.
Yeah.
Inspiration lasts for about 24 hours. Motivation will last for a couple days, but if you just rely on that, you're not going to be successful because obstacles come into play. So what we do is we identify maybe what went well in the past, but what else so didn't. And if we can kind of navigate those challenges in the past, we can set up intention strategies to kind of push through that. An example could be someone in the past maybe struggled to lose weight because they're an emotional eater at night. So that's completely normal. I think a large percentage of the population deals with that. Instead of fighting their natural circadian rhythm of eating at night, we might help them come up with some intentional, easy to grab protein snacks that fit the context of their macronutrient profile, that don't pivot them away from their goals while also giving them that sweet essence that they're craving at that time. Maybe someone finds that they're great during the week, but they lack structure on the weekend. In order to increase success likelihood, we're going to try to think of some structure patterns on the weekend, where maybe we're encouraging them to eat at specific times on the weekend and specific foods that they would normally on the weekend. We just help them rearrange the macros and what they're eating specifically just a little bit, so it fits in the context of what they normally would do.
Cool.
I know I took a lot of angles there to answer that.
No, you're good. You're good. So, like, when you initially meet with a lead or a potential client, or a current client that wants to start doing some sort of, I guess we can take it in the nutrition realm, because I feel like there's a lot more emotional attachment to food.
Yes.
And it affects people's behavior, affects people's mood a lot more. Sometimes it could bring joy, and it could be something to celebrate, like specifically around the holidays, but then also it can bring a lot of anxiety, which we acknowledge and we understand that it's different for everybody. So I think it's important to note again that you mentioned barriers, and that although you may not have the barriers right now, but what could potentially be a barrier. For example, teachers are going back to school.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if they don't have like a part-time job in the summer, and so they take advantage of their summers off, and all they do is, well, not all they do, they obviously have normal everyday things they have to do. Maybe they own a home, they have kids, they have a family, but they have a little bit more time on their hands to get a workout in. But now school is coming around again in the next couple of days and weeks for a lot of people. So then now that giant window during the day, that 8-9 hours that they had during the summer, is now taken away from them because they're at work. So I think it's important to early, before the barrier comes, to acknowledge that's a barrier and how to work around it.
Yes.
Is that the idea?
Yes, yeah. Anticipating challenges, creating a structure to make the challenges more feasible, and then also not making it impossible to follow. So that's why we like to work within the context of these people's rhythms. We're not going to give the blatant, obvious, eat less, move more advice. We're going to find tangible ways to do that without being impractical. And then we're also really big on celebrating wins. And when we say celebrating wins, I'm more into celebrating behavioral wins over achievement wins, because the behavioral wins are what really leads to achievable wins. If you look at the most successful bodybuilders and you analyze their psychology, they find joy in winning in the suck, and maybe saying no to certain things when they have to say no, saying yes to things that they should say yes to. When they win, it's like, okay, what's next? Look at Tom Brady, for example. Tom Brady, after winning the Super Bowl, kind of happy, but he's back to the grind immediately the next day. Not because he loves torturing himself, but because he loves that process.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is, if we're talking with a client and we know they're going to have some potential roadblocks that could hinder them, for example, we're using fat loss as an example, maybe they have like 3 birthday parties coming up this coming week. We talk to them the next week. They say, yes, I went to the 3 birthday parties in the past. I would drink 3 bottles of wine, half of the cake, and then I would order Taco Bell. This time around, I had 1 slice of cake. I pre-gamed with a Fairlife shake. I got 7 hours of sleep, and I limited myself to 2 glasses of wine. We encourage them in those moments when they get back home to give themselves a little hype talk to themselves, saying, I did it.
Absolutely.
I won. And celebrating that behavior, that's how you stack on victories and eventually lead to habit formation.
Yeah, it's the small wins that go a long way. From personal experience working with family and friends, I probably, and you probably get the same thing, maybe once a month or so, I'll get an old friend, family member, somebody will reach out asking questions like how to get started. And literally the first thing they say is, I want something for 5-6 days a week. Mm-hmm. And then typically most people just kind of default to like 1 day of rest. And in terms of training, 5 to 6 days a week, like you have to look at the client's training history. If they're doing absolutely nothing before that, several years, and then all of a sudden they want to jump to 5 to 6 days of training, that's great. I'm happy they're motivated, but odds are that they're going to do that first, maybe second week of training. They're going to get absolutely destroyed in terms of volume because they're just not used to it. And then it's going to deter them because they're sore. Nobody wants to be have crippling soreness. The motivation goes away. You can't move. You can't do daily activities and do your daily thing in life. And I think that the small wins are very similar to starting and off, I guess, lack of a better word, slow and gradually building. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So, I think it's starting off, like you mentioned at the very beginning, with a lot of motivation, and it wears off 24 hours is very real. And I think people then beat themselves up and think that they're the issue when that motivation, I guess you can say, doesn't last forever.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Exactly. When motivation doesn't last for hours, that's when you have to tap into discipline, and that's where those intention ideas help you kind of like grind through that.
Yeah.
And then the positive is life isn't, for most people, a continual grind. If you can grind through and maintain, so to speak, then once you get back to easy sailing, you can continue to drive progress. I love the analogy. I use this with a lot of my clients. If you watch any Lord of the Rings movie, at the beginning of the war, oftentimes the good guys are dominating or winning. That kind of isn't line with motivation. The first couple of weeks, you might be really successful, but then eventually life happens. It gets hard. I encourage my clients in those moments. This is when the enemy is really strong. This is in the Lord of the Rings. The bad guy isn't really pushing the good guys back, the orcs or whatever they are.
Yeah.
But it's almost like a stalemate. Stalemates are wins, in my opinion, because you're not losing ground, especially when life is really hard. I'm coaching with this one nutrition athlete. She had 4 birthday parties this last week, and she came into the call and she's like, "Yeah, Mike, I wasn't that great. I didn't make any progress this week." And I smiled and I acknowledged her statement, but also she did win. I was really proud of her because she held her ground. She wasn't perfect the entire time, but she also was still tapping into discipline, finding ways to get protein in.
Yeah.
She didn't lose any ground. This week, she's going to continue to drive progress, and in the scope of 52 weeks, you have a couple weeks where maybe it's a break-even week. Totally perfect.
Yeah, that's a win.
That's a big win.
Especially with those not random, but it might be planned, but out of the ordinary events. Like summer is a huge time for weddings.
Yeah.
And for example, I had 2 weddings in June, and it involved several hours in the car traveling, several hours at a venue, I knew what food I was being served, but I didn't know where my breakfast was coming the next day, or snacks and whatnot. So you had to be prepared, and coming out of there, say you're in a fat loss phase, and you come out and your weight didn't change at all. That's a win in my book.
100%. So
Yeah.
the theme here is there's always going to be a win in the scope of a week for every client. The coach's duty is to find that one win, whatever that may be, and put the locus of focus into that win. And what that will do is now that the client is going to be thinking about that win, and that's going to help potentiate future positive behavior. But notice we're focusing on the behavioral outcome.
Yeah.
I didn't even focus necessarily on the weight there that the client maintained. We're focusing on the small little things they did to maintain the win or the weight. Something else I noticed when you're coaching clients, instead of overhyping the PRs they set, I prefer to overhype the technique and the ability to push close to failure.
Yeah.
Because I find when I was hyping up PRs more so early in my early training career, clients would start to like bend technique, bend effort to potentiate that one thrill of success within the lift, but that did not lead to longitudinal progress. When I started hyping up a client's ability to maintain technique under duress with same concentric speed or eccentric speed, being willing to go to slow concentrics because they're tired, but not giving ground on technique, PR started to become more prevalent, and more progress was made.
Yeah. So basically, the goal isn't a PR. The goal is great technique and keeping things measurable and kind of repeatable and consistent.
Yes.
And then the outcome can be a PR or that weight loss or whatever.
Yeah, the likelihood of the outcome that we want is more positive. So focusing on those behaviors that potentiate outcome is more than focusing on outcome.
Yeah. Putting an emphasis and focus on the changing the behavior kind of gives you that cherry on top of whatever your goal may be. And I think that reigns true, because what I've noticed is like if coaches they're kind of talking at their client, they're telling them what they need to do, or in a manner of like, you need to do this or this will happen, kind of like what you mentioned with like doctors, if you don't lose weight you'll die. There's a higher chance of people rebelling and not doing what they're being told to do. Instead, that positive reinforcement and consistency within the coaching of kind of focusing on not so much the goal at hand. Yes, okay, you came to me because you wanted to lose the weight, but that positive reinforcement of the little things, the showing up early and Mike's clients walking on the treadmill waiting for him for 5 minutes, or I see it all the time at Wheaton, like people show up 10-15 minutes to get a little bit extra warmed up, get extra steps in on the treadmills before the group class.
Yeah.
Like, those little things, even though you're thinking it's 5 minutes, it's 10 minutes, those things add up over the day, the course of the day, the week, the months, and the 52 week period of the year, and then it leads to greater outcomes.
Yeah, and so helping the athlete build autonomy. If you're working with a lot of athletes, it's really important to be consistent and be principle-based. And if you're consistent and principle-based with everyone you work with, all of a sudden you create an ecosystem where you're not the only person that's coaching them, but everyone's kind of coaching one another.
Yeah.
And that gives more eyes, more accountability, and that also will increase success likelihood. Most great things that occur within the individual occur due to other individuals building them up around them.
Absolutely.
So creating a utopian society towards anabolism of lean tissue, catabolism of fat tissue, positive reinforcement of behavior, that ecosystem allows individuals to thrive and rise.
Yeah.
You don't want the ecosystem where the lobsters are trying to fight each other to get out of the pot. They're all kind of stuck in the bottom. So that's something that we try to do then in the corporate side here, in terms of like having everyone united with one another. We are a bunch of individuals with individual goals, but tying goals of the individual to those around them increases success likelihood because of greater accountability that's not just kind of landed into the one coach that's working with the client.
Absolutely.
So I'm slightly libertarian Marxist in my political theory. I think that's what creates the best thriving, functioning society, and I try to do that in the psychology side of how I coach people.
Yeah.
as well.
And even in the last, like this past summer, those clients that you have been working with your powerlifting team, like they see the progress that they're making, and maybe it's not their ultimate goal, but they see the little goals being achieved week after week, and then they kind of and I'm going to backtrack a bit. Something I learned from Jason Kalipa is that like we have the owners, they affect the managers, and the managers affect the coaches, and the coaches affect the members or athletes, and then the members or athletes affect the community. And in just this summer, Mike has a client that brought in her two sons that started working with the group, because the group kind of held everyone, each one of them, accountable. The 7:30 a.m. group, even the 7:30 p.m. group. I had several class members ask if they can bring in their spouse and whatnot. I have a personal training client that has brought in two of her kids, and one of them, the main focus wasn't even, actually two clients that did this brought in their kids. The main focus wasn't even to learn how to exercise correctly or lift or the terminology. Literally the reason was I want them to have more confidence.
Yeah.
And they see the benefit from the consistent coaching and the psychological aspect of it, and then they want to pass it on and tell more people about it. And that's how, as a collective group, we get better. So
yeah. And then for each individual, be the coach that individual needs. Something that I'll sometimes ask athletes is, who was your favorite coach?
Mm-hmm.
And what was that coach like? And why was that coach your favorite? Become the person that helps them get there. So that takes a little bit of chameleon work. If you're normally a hyper positive person, but the person needs the raw truth,
mm-hmm.
still be positive, but also kind of shift your angle in terms of how you're working with that individual. And that will usually help increase success likelihood.
Mm-hmm. What's going on, Tim?
No, dude, greatest athlete right there.
Well, I hear people say when I'm working on ultimate 21st century athlete, they keep saying about me. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Any closing remarks?
No, and I guess one closing remark is maybe you haven't been successful in the past. That's okay. Don't make your goals your identity. They are not who you are.
They don't mean any. They
don't
mean
mean
something, but they don't make you any better of a person.
And if you weren't successful in the past, maybe the timing was just off. Be patient with yourself. Allow yourself grace.
Mm-hmm.
Think about these principles to a small extent. Write down some specific goals. Write down the challenges that might obstruct you from getting there. And just do the best you can each day. Enjoy the journey. And one day you'll hit the destination, and then you'll create a new journey path to create an even bigger destination.
Yeah. It just keeps... You just keep adding on to it.
Yeah, you keep adding on.
So, all right. If anybody needs you want to set up a goal review meeting, or wants to meet with one of the coaches, talk about nutrition or training, or even learn more about the psychology of training and behavior change, make sure you can. We're always open to hear from you, and make sure to reach out to us. Thanks, Mike.